Okay, so are you ready to dive into another deep dive?
Always.
This time we're looking at video game development,
Okay.
and you've given us a ton of information on this,
Right.
mostly about a 3D action-adventure game called Scout COD.
Yeah.
We're talking technical papers, design docs, all that good stuff.
Awesome.
So it seems like you're interested in like the really technical side of how games are made.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where it gets really fascinating.
Yeah.
Right? When you start to see how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Absolutely. So we're going to be translating a lot of this tech speak into plain English,
Yeah.
so we can all kind of follow along. And by the end of this deep dive,
Hmm.
you'll see games in a whole new light.
That's the goal. I like it.
So let's start with the foundation of a video game, the game engine. Your source material defines it as a framework for building games.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So, it's kind of like saying, if you're going to build not just a house, but like a whole world,
Okay.
you wouldn't start by like baking the bricks and, chopping down the trees yourself.
Right.
You would want some sort of pre-built system.
Yeah.
A game engine is kind of like the pre-built foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So it handles things like the physics, the sound, how objects interact,
Right.
all those core systems that if you didn't have them, you would have to build from scratch.
Wow.
So it lets developers really focus on the creative stuff.
So it's like a toolbox of pre-made systems that they can pull from
Exactly.
instead of reinventing the wheel each time.
Yeah. And that's actually kind of how the term game engine came about.
Oh,
It emerged in the 90s with games like Doom,
okay.
where developers realized they could separate those core mechanics from the game content itself.
Interesting.
Like the levels, the art, the story.
So Doom, the game that we think of,
Yeah.
isn't like one thing, it's a bunch of systems all working together.
Exactly. And I think what's cool about Doom is that it kind of provided the core ingredients for what we understand to be a first-person shooter today.
Right.
And then developers have been kind of remixing and refining those ingredients ever since.
Wow.
That's why I think we have so much diversity in that genre today.
So if the engine is the foundation, how is it structured?
Yeah.
Because I saw in the source material, there's this idea of like layers, like a cake.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's such a good visualization.
Yeah.
So at the very bottom, you have the hardware, right? Your computer, your console, your phone, whatever you're playing the game on.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, you have a layer that basically translates between the game and the hardware to make sure that the game runs smoothly across these different devices.
So that's how a game made for like a really powerful PC
Yeah,
can run on my phone that has like way less power.
precisely.
Wow.
And then we get to the good stuff, the core systems.
Okay.
So this is like resource management, loading all those beautiful visuals,
Yeah.
the rendering engine, which makes the graphics pop the way that they do,
Mm-hmm.
the physics, the collision detection, it's all in there.
So when my character jumps in a game
Yes.
and lands on a platform,
Yeah,
it's not just an animation happening.
right.
There's actual code deciding how the character interacts with that.
It's true. So when you think about it, when your character bumps into a wall,
Yeah.
there's code that's basically saying, okay, you've hit a boundary, you can't go any further.
Right.
It's really quite fascinating.
And then even within those systems, it sounds like there's even more layers of complexity.
Oh, absolutely. Take the rendering engine, for example.
Yeah.
It's deciding what gets drawn, how light interacts with objects, all in real time.
Wow.
It's mind-blowing how much optimization goes on behind the scenes.
It's like our brains filtering out unnecessary information,
It's true.
but like on a massive code-driven scale.
Right.
And speaking of things that seem alive,
Yes.
there's the animation system.
Oh, yeah. This is where artists and programmers really get to collaborate to bring these characters to life.
Yeah.
Make them move in a believable way.
Because there was this term skinning that I saw,
Oh, right. Yeah.
and it seemed very technical.
So skinning is basically binding a 3D model to a skeleton
Okay.
so that it can move in a realistic way. Because without skinning, animations would look really stiff and unnatural.
So when I see a character like seamlessly transition from walking to sprinting,
Yeah.
or like do some kind of crazy combat move,
Yeah.
that's skinning at work.
That's skinning at work, exactly. And it's not just about the movement. It's also things like how clothing moves, how hair reacts.
Wow.
It's all these subtle details that really trick our brains into believing what we're seeing on screen.
So it's amazing how much detail goes into making those worlds feel real.
Yeah, and that actually brings us to a really crucial point, and that's choosing the right engine for the job.
Right, because not all game engines are created equal.
Exactly. One size does not fit all.
And the source material went into like this really deep comparison of all these different engines.
There are a lot out there.
CryEngineed Tech Unity, Unreal Engine source.
All right.
And they were evaluating them on these technical factors and even like business factors.
The big decision for developers.
Yeah.
Because each engine has its strengths and weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
Some are better for like sprawling open worlds.
Okay.
Others might excel at really realistic physics or super stunning graphics.
Yeah.
And choosing the wrong engine, it can really make or break a game's development.
Wow. And there was one that kind of stood out as a favorite. It seemed like Unity.
Yeah.
Especially because it's user-friendliness.
It's very accessible.
And it's also the most popular engine for mobile games, which is a massive market.
Unity has been huge for indie developers.
Okay.
Because it's really kind of like democratized game development in a lot of ways.
How so?
Well, you don't need a massive studio with $1 million budget
Okay.
to get your ideas out there.
That's amazing.
You can create a game with a relatively small team. And,
Wow.
And Unity has really opened the door for that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's probably why we've seen such an explosion of creativity in mobile gaming
Absolutely.
in the past, like, decade or so.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of specific games,
Yes.
you provided some really interesting material on the design choices made in building Scout SIDAC.
Yeah.
Specifically how they use the Unity engine.
It seems like they're really pushing the engine to create a really unique player experience.
Yeah, they're doing some clever things with character movement and combat.
So are we ready to explore how they use those engine features to bring Scout CO to life?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
You've got this powerful engine in Unity, right, ready to build a world.
Yeah.
But how do you organize all that code, all those systems,
Right?
to create like a cohesive experience?
Yeah.
And that's where design patterns come in.
Okay.
And the source material highlights one in particular
Okay.
called Model View Controller, or MVC for short.
Okay, MVC.
Yeah, have you heard of this?
I've heard the term.
Yeah,
It's like a classic in software development.
it is.
Right.
It's everywhere.
But can you kind of break it down for me
Sure.
in the context of game development?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
imagine you're holding a video game controller, right?
Okay.
That controller is your interface to the game world, the view.
Okay.
You press a button, your character jumps.
Right.
That's the controller translating your input into action.
Okay.
But behind the scenes, the game is tracking your character's position, their speed,
Yeah.
their stamina,
Mm-hmm.
all the data that defines the game state. That's the model.
So MVC is like a way of separating the game's logic
Yes.
from how it's presented to the player.
Exactly.
And how the player interacts with it.
You got it.
Okay.
And the separation is crucial
Okay.
for managing complexity.
Okay.
It makes the code cleaner, easier to update, less prone to bugs.
Right.
Plus, it allows for specialization.
Okay.
So artists can focus on the view,
Mm-hmm.
programmers can focus on the model and controller, and it all works in harmony.
Like different departments in a game studio.
Exactly.
But each kind of handling their own domain, but then it all comes together.
It all comes together beautifully in the end.
So how does Scout SID use this MVC pattern?
So they use it to create this really immersive and strategic movement system.
Okay.
Remember how we were talking about different movement speeds affecting stamina?
Yeah.
That's a great example of MVC in action.
Yeah.
So the model is tracking the scout's stamina level.
Okay.
The controller is taking your input, walking, jogging, running,
Mm-hmm.
and the view is showing you the impact on your stamina bar.
Gotcha.
Maybe even changing your character's animation to look more tired.
So it's not just pressing a button to move.
Right.
There's actual strategy involved.
There's strategy. You have to think about managing your resources.
Wow.
And this is where it gets even more interesting when you think about combat.
Okay.
The source material mentioned enemies having different zones of awareness than MVC in action.
Okay.
So the model defines those zones,
Okay.
how far an enemy can see or hear, how they react to different stimuli.
Right.
The controller determines if the player is within those zones,
Mm-hmm.
and the view dictates how the enemy behaves.
Okay.
So are they patrolling casually?
Okay.
Are they investigating a sound? Or have they spotted you and are now in full attack mode?
So sneaking up on an enemy isn't just about moving slowly. It's about understanding how all these systems are interacting.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so cool.
Yeah.
There's this hidden depth that most players probably don't even realize.
Yeah. And that depth is kind of what makes games so compelling, right?
Exactly.
You feel like you're outsmarting the game.
You're playing on multiple levels, and we're really just scratching the surface here.
Yeah.
But you can see how this pattern, this MVC pattern, gives developers fine-grained control over the experience.
Yeah.
From something as simple as walking
Right.
to, complex enemy encounters, it's all managed through this elegant structure.
It's fascinating how something so fundamental to a game's design is totally invisible to the player,
I know, right? It's like the puppet master behind the scenes.
but it shapes the entire experience.
Totally.
Speaking of shaping the experience, what about the visuals?
Oh, yeah.
How does Scout Sod use Unity to create that look and feel?
Well, this is where Unity's rendering engine and animation system really shine.
Okay.
The source material mentioned, they're going for a specific art style.
They did, yeah.
A bit stylized, but still grounded in realism.
Yeah, they want it to be believable,
Yeah.
but also visually distinct.
Right, not an easy balance to strike.
Yeah, not at all.
But this is where, artistic talent meets that technical prowess. The source mentioned using shaders.
Yes.
Think of these as like filters that determine how light interacts with surfaces
Okay.
to achieve a certain look.
So that sense of depth, the
Yeah.
way that light filters through leaves in a forest, or the glint of sunlight on metal, that's all shaders.
That's all shaders. That's
Yeah.
all carefully crafted by artists using Unity's tools.
It's incredible.
And then there's the animation, right? We were talking about skinning earlier.
Attaching the digital skeleton
Yeah.
to the 3D model.
Right. So Unity's mechanism system, take that a step further.
Okay.
Imagine your character transitioning from a walk to a jog to a full sprint. Mechanism blends those animations together. So it creates this incredibly natural motion.
So it's the difference between a character that feels robotic
Yes.
and a character that feels like a living, breathing.
Fluid and lifelike, exactly.
And they talked about blending different attack animations too
Oh, yeah.
in the source material.
So the scout can perform a light attack, a heavy attack, and this special boost attack. Mechanism allows them to blend those animations contextually.
Wow.
So if you're running and then attack, the animation will transition smoothly from a run to a running attack.
That's amazing.
It adds this extra layer of realism and responsiveness.
It's incredible how much detail goes into these seemingly small things.
It's all about the details.
I'm starting to understand why game development is such a collaborative effort.
Oh, absolutely. It takes a village.
Right.
Artists, programmers, designers, all working together.
And that collaboration extends to the audio as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because they talk about how they want to create this really immersive soundscape in Scout COD.
Absolutely. And Unity has some amazing spatial audio features that they're really taking advantage of.
So if I'm in a cave, the sound is going to echo differently than if I'm out in the open.
Precisely. And those subtle details,
Right.
they make a world of difference.
Wow. It's like they're creating a virtual reality
They are.
for your ear.
It's about tricking the senses, creating an experience that feels believable and engaging.
Yeah.
And Unity provides the tools
Right.
to do that,
Yeah.
but it's up to the developers
Yeah.
to use those tools creatively and effectively.
It sounds like the Scout COD developers are really pushing those boundaries.
They're doing some really innovative things.
But creating a game is more than just the tech, right?
Right.
What about the gameplay, the level design? How do those things fit into all of this?
That's a great question, and that's where the real magic happens.
Yeah, so we've talked about the tech, the engine, the design patterns.
Right.
But what about the game itself?
Yeah.
Like the fun factor, the challenge, the thing that makes you want to keep playing.
Right.
How does Scout Crow use all this stuff to craft a compelling experience?
Well, that's where game design comes in.
Okay.
The art of crafting those rules and challenges that really engage the player.
Okay.
And your source material hints at a focus on what's called emergent gameplay.
Emergent gameplay, that sounds intriguing, but I don't really know what that means.
So it's kind of like giving players a set of tools and systems
Okay.
and then letting them discover unexpected ways to interact with the game world.
Okay.
So remember we were talking about the stamina system
Yeah.
that could lead to players developing totally different play styles.
Okay.
Some players might just say, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going for all-out sprints every time.
Okay.
Other players might be more strategic. They might prioritize stealth, conserve their energy for crucial moments.
So the same system used in different ways creates a more dynamic experience.
Exactly. And it's not just about player choice, but it's also how those choices interact with the game systems themselves.
Okay.
The source material mentioned that Scout CID's environments are designed with multiple solutions in mind.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe there's a puzzle you can solve with brute force. But a clever player might find a more elegant solution
Right.
using the environment and the Scout's abilities.
Like those aha moments you get in a game
Exactly.
when you figure out a creative solution
Yes.
that the developers probably didn't even think of.
And those are pure gold for game designers.
Yeah.
Because it means you're empowering players to experiment,
Right.
to feel clever, to make the game their own.
It's like the difference between watching a movie
Yes.
and being a character in an interactive story.
Exactly. You're not just following a script.
Right.
You're shaping the narrative.
Through your actions.
Through your actions, exactly.
And speaking of narrative,
Yes.
it sounds like Scout So isn't just about action.
Right.
There's a story here.
There is.
A mystery to unravel.
They're using something called environmental storytelling.
Environmental storytelling.
Yeah. So using the game world itself to hint at a deeper narrative.
What does that mean?
So instead of relying just on like cutscenes or dialogue,
Okay.
they're scattering clues throughout the world.
Okay.
Maybe you find a discarded note, a faded photograph, a crumbling building that hints at a forgotten history.
Wow.
It's up to the player to piece it all together.
So it's like being a detective.
Yes.
Exactly.
In a video game.
It makes the world feel more real, more lived in.
I love that kind of subtle storytelling.
Yeah, me too.
It's so much more immersive.
And it respects the player's intelligence, right?
Right?
It's not spoon-feeding them the story.
It's making me want to play this game
I know, right?
even more now.
It's going to be awesome.
But creating a game of this scope, it's not easy.
Oh. And the source material actually mentions some of the challenges.
Yeah, there were some funny ones in there.
They even talked about specific bugs that they encountered.
Oh, yeah. I love when they share those war stories.
Remember that flying character glitch?
Oh, yeah, where the character just goes
Yeah.
shooting up into the air.
It sounds more hilarious than game-breaking.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even with the best planning, the most powerful tools,
Right.
things can and will go wrong.
It's all part of the process.
It's that iterative process.
Right.
You identify problems, you find creative solutions,
Yeah.
and you iterate until you find that perfect balance of challenge and enjoyment.
And that's what makes game development so interesting.
Yeah, it really is this fascinating blend of art and technology.
It's like this constant process of learning and
Right.
problem solving.
Absolutely, and pushing those boundaries of what's possible.
But at the end of the day, it's about creating experiences
Yes.
that resonate with players.
that make them feel something,
Yeah.
whether it's joy, excitement, wonder, even frustration.
Those are the moments we remember.
Those are the moments we remember.
Long after we put the controller down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So next time you boot up your favorite game,
Yeah.
take a moment to appreciate
Yeah.
all that work that went into it.
Absolutely.
It really is a testament to human creativity and ingenuity.
It really is. Thanks for taking this deep dive with me.
Of course, anytime,